So Ilhan Omar's possible ties to a massive Minnesota fraud scheme are back in the spotlight. That after one of the scheme's alleged orchestrators was arrested in Somalia just last week.
It's not like a one-off. She has relationships with many of those who've been convicted or charged in this scheme. So I think it's absolutely relevant that we get to the truth of what those communications with her office were.
Ilhan Omar continues to get herself into some trouble. There's some new documents on Ilhan Omar's staff, and this fraud ring, it's not just guilt by association. There's more to this story, and there's more that Ilhan Omar needs to answer. But will she? Let's get into it.
Are you confident that the fraud that has been discovered is no longer being conducted now? Is there any justification for saying this food stamp money is somehow being misused?
Yeah, there are ways to investigate fraud, which we have been doing in Minnesota, which the federal government has been doing under the Biden administration. There is no reason for them to use this level of rhetoric. There is no reason for them to fully stop the funding these programs. The only reason they are doing that is for PR purposes, and it is harming our state, it is harming my constituents, and it is creating the kind of chaos and confusion that no one needs in this moment.
Because the administration and many conservative allies of the administration argue that this is still ongoing.
This guy who was arrested was allegedly one of the orchestrators of the massive Feeding Our Futures fraud scheme. And when he was charged 4 years ago, Abdikerm Idle fled the country. His name came up a lot during the trial of the now convicted ringleader of the scandal, Amy Bach. And that trial also exposed multiple communications they had with Congresswoman Ilhan Omar's staff.
And then this gentleman, Abdikerm Idle. He was last seen in Minnesota in November 2021. Abdikerm Idle had booked a round-trip ticket from Minneapolis to London and never came back. But here he is in custody in Mogadishu, Somalia, 4.5 years later.
This office has now been focusing intensively on fraud against the taxpayers of the United States and the taxpayers of Minnesota.
Along with Bach, Idle allegedly recruited and bribed the businesses that submitted fake receipts and invoices to the Minnesota Department of Education in the Feeding Our Future scheme. Investigators also allege Idle personally took in more than $5 million in cash and used some of it to buy a house in Burnsville, and also sent some of that to Uganda, China, and the UAE.
For other people of importance.
So right off the bat, this isn't just a staffer. This is a documented court-exposed communications between Omar's actual office and the people now convicted in that $250 million fraud scheme. And you want to be fair, working in a congressional office means constituents. Community leaders, nonprofits, going to reach out constantly. That's the job. But when the trial of the scheme's own ringleader, Amy Bach, surfaces, there was multiple communications, plural, with Ilhan Omar's staff. It can't just be background noise anymore. This is the pattern, and patterns are what investigators start to build their cases on. So my question isn't, did the contact happen? We know it did. My question is what those communications actually said. And right now we don't know because a chunk of this stuff is sealed. But real quick, if you like this type of content, hit the subscribe button as we get to 200,000 subscribers. Let's get back into it.
For example, in February 2021, there was an email chain between Bach and Omar's office with the subject line, "Help with USDA food programs," the same programs that were targeted by the fraudsters for more than $250 million.
February 2022, so this is not some vague years later coincidence. That's an email with a subject line directly referencing the exact USDA food programs that ended up being the vehicle for the $250 million fraud. I mean, come on. You don't get to have a documented email exchange about a program that later gets robbed blind and then act shocked when people start asking questions. Now, is an email about help with food programs automatically evidence of wrongdoing? No, this could be completely routine casework. But that's exactly why transparency matters here. If it's nothing, show us it's nothing. The timeline doesn't lie. When the office had the direct email contact about the exact program in question is now the same office stonewalling requests for records. That's the pattern people are reacting to. It looks like people are covering each other's tracks, whether it's themselves or people they worked with in the past. Something is going on here.
And when Minnesota lawmakers investigating the fraud requested Congresswoman Omar to turn those records related to her office's contacts with individuals who've been charged or convicted in the scheme, she refused.
And here's where this stops being an innocent contact and starts being a choice. Lawmakers didn't ask her to explain herself on camera. They're asking for records, documents, the stuff that either clears you or it doesn't. If Ilhan Omar has nothing to hide, the records would prove that she has nothing to hide. The easier win in the entire world by just handing over documents.
It's not like a one-off. She has relationships with many of those who have been convicted or charged in this scheme. So I think it's absolutely relevant that we get to the truth of what those communications with her office were.
Refusing to hand over doesn't make the questions go away. It makes them even louder. This is the part where if you're one of her constituents, you should want those records to be out there as much as her critics do. If I got nothing to hide, the records would prove I have nothing to hide. That's the easiest win in the whole world. Refusing to hand them over doesn't make the questions go away. It makes them louder. This is the part where if you're one of her constituents, you should want those records out there just as much as her critics do, because it either clears her name completely or it doesn't. The idea that Ilhan Omar refused to show us what's going on reads a certain way regardless of whatever side of the aisle that you're on.
Omar has not been charged or accused of any crime connected to the fraud, and she denies any wrongdoing, telling Fox Digital, any claim that I had knowledge of this scheme is flat out false. As I stated from the beginning, stealing millions of dollars under the guise of feeding hungry children to bankroll lavish lifestyles and extravagant expenses is reprehensible.
Okay, so we have her denial, right? It's flat, direct, no hedging, and we need to take denial seriously. She hasn't been charged with anything connected to the scheme. That does matter. But we can also hold two thoughts at once. She has a right to presume to be innocent, and the pattern here is too hard to ignore. Direct staff communications about the exact programs involved. A refusal to hand over records that can settle all of this. One former staffer already convicted and looking at serious time for over $3 million. That's not nothing. That's not a guilt by association either. You're too close to this. And when you combine that with the previous videos we talked about with the financial disclosure questions around her husband's businesses, the kind of numbers that just don't add up until they suddenly got corrected, it stacks up into a pattern that a flat denial alone doesn't erase. We're not saying we know what happened. We're saying, show us the records and we can all find out together. So here's where I land on this one. She hasn't been charged. And obviously we do not convict people in a YouTube video. What we're saying is most likely something happened. Again, personal opinion here. We're saying that the pattern here deserves some real scrutiny. Documented staff communications with people now convicted in this, again, $250 million fraud scheme. Email trail about the exact USDA programs that got looted. A former staffer already pleaded guilty, mind you, to pocketing millions of dollars. And the part that really sticks here, a direct refusal to hand over records that the state lawmakers are asking for. If this was nothing, the easiest move in the world to do is provide some transparency. Instead, we got a denial and a stonewall. And the GOP lawmakers are already pushing for a subpoena, so this is not going away. And obviously, we will continue to follow this until more comes out, including whatever happens to that arrest overseas. Let me know what you guys think about this story in the comments below. Thank you for taking time to watch this video, and I'll see you guys in the next video.